In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. Take control of your destiny. Understand your past, put your present in context, and know your future with a twist. Check out the designs and watch the videos about Abracast Tarot Card Deck on Advertise.com. When you order a deck, get a free exclusive bonus tarot card. Also, sign into the mailing list to get a free ebook about the Abracast Tarot Card Deck and other bonus content. Visit the storefront on Abracast.com. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is the Abracast, and I'm John Towers. Sorry, we're skipping the cold open tonight. We got something new. We're going to be finishing our Count Saint-Germain episodes. They've been fun, but we're just about at the end of the rope here, and we have a lot. We have a long length of rope to get through. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I found this site. It's called findingcountsaintgermain.com, and the guy who does this site built like a timeline starting from 600 BC all the way up to like the 1970s of where Count Saint-Germain reportedly shows up in history. So I thought it would be fun to kind of just bang through this and see some of these idiosyncratic kind of like reports of him coming up in different various points in history. So that's the main featured site. So also I'm going to cite Wikipedia. So when we run into like historically relevant people, I just did the clipped like the summary from Wikipedia just so we get a flavor of who these people are. And then the last resource that I'm going to use is The Secret Destiny of America, which I've talked about many times on the show. It was written by Manly P. Hall, and I found something in this timeline that made me really draw this Manly P. Hall story to it. So we're definitely going to get to that because I get off on reading The Secret Destiny of America stuff. So besides that, let me lay all my cards literally on the table. Count Saint-Germain, I've kind of known about him or heard about him or whatever for quite a long time. If you pick up the last graphic novel that I did, The Ages, I'm sure that you could see some of these things. Like The Ages is about this walking skeleton who can't ever die. He's an ever-living warrior. So I draw Count Saint-Germain as part of the sort of partial inspiration for that, along with another dude. We're actually going to talk about the Wandering Jew. And for those of you who have read the book, or hey, spoiler alerts, like Cain, who gets cursed to walk the earth forever, and these kind of figures, right? So it's fun kind of going back and looking at this Count Saint-Germain stuff, because it wasn't like a total rip. Like my character isn't Count Saint-Germain, but he is one of these guys that pop up through history. And also, Cyrus the Dead Guy is my character's name. If you ever see the little skull associated with the podcast on some of the artwork, especially the bookmarks I use as swag, or even the wizard card, you'll see he's a bit of a dandy. Or if you read any of the books that he's in, he's a bit of a dandy, but he's also a bit of a badass. So just kind of wanted to explain like my personal connection with this story of Count Saint-Germain. So let's get into this, right? And you're like, wait, you said this story starts 600 years before Christ, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. 600 to 530 BC, the Count claims to have received the staff of Moses from one of Moses' great-grandsons during the time of Cyrus. Location, Babylon. So I'm going to talk about the staff first. The staff is first mentioned in the book of Exodus, chapter 4, verse 2. And when God appears to Moses in the form of a burning bush, because God's omnipotent, right? So he knows everything. So the first thing he does is God asks Moses what he has in his hand. He shows up as this burning bush, and he's like, yo, bro, what do you got in your hand? And Moses answers a staff or a rod in the King James version. And this staff is miraculously transformed into a snake and then back into a staff. This is the staff that Moses uses with the magic duel with the Egyptian magicians I've talked about on the show before. Janez and Jambres, the Egyptian magicians, they're also in the Ages graphic novel, by the way. And even closer to sort of current projects or whatever, this card is the Three of Wands card. It's like all the other wands in my tarot card deck are actually wands, except for this one. It's three snakes, and the one snake is eating the two other snakes, creating like these three spirals of snakes, and it's the magic duel, Moses and the Egyptian magician's magic duel. Another thing it mentions here is in the time of Cyrus. So Cyrus II of Persia, he was commonly known as Cyrus the Great, not to be confused with Cyrus the Dead Guy, by the way. He's also called Cyrus the Elder by the Greeks. He was the founder of this empire. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'm going to try to pronounce it. It's the Achaemenid Empire. It was the first Persian empire. Under his rule, the empire embraced all previous civilized states in the ancient Near East and expanded vastly and eventually conquered most of Western Asia and Central Asia, from the Mediterranean Sea and the Hellespont in the west to the Indus River to the east. And Cyrus the Great created the largest empire the world had ever seen. Under his successors, the empire eventually stretched to its maximum extent from parts of the Balkans and Macedonia and Eastern Europe proper in the West. So the reason that I wanted to mention this is because you get a lot of these in the time of Trump. Now, no matter what you think, and this is going to be posted after the first debate, so I don't know what happens. So in the time of Trump, when he first started messing around in Israel, you remember he moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and this is something that every presidential candidate has claimed that he was going to do while he was in office, and then as soon as they get elected, that they forget about it because it's a very awful, could be terrifyingly horrible thing to do if you don't know what you're doing. So Trump did it, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, he's going to start a war." And then the war never really kicked off. And then he started doing all these peace treaties that we were talking about with the other Arab countries in the region. And I'm not bootlicking for Trump. I'm just explaining the reason that I'm bringing the Cyrus II thing up of Persia is because a lot of the Hebrew, a lot of the Jews over there that pay attention to biblical prophet or rabbinical prophecy and all of this stuff equate Trump to this Cyrus figure. And it's because of this first paragraph or this first line here. I'm going to go back to it. He goes, under his rule, the empire embraced all the previous civilized states. So he was, he's Persian. Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk out of class for a second. So he's Persian. He's possibly some sort of pagan, definitely like a Gentile figure, a non-Jew, and he rules over other people like that, all the other different kind of civilized cultures, and that means that he also ruled over Jewish people. So I don't have a whole lot of things at my disposal, nor do I have time to speculate or look forward to get into it. It is an interesting topic, but a lot of these figures that pay attention to Old Testament prophecy and whatnot equate Trump with Cyrus because of these kind of crazy things that he's doing over there. A peace is broken out in the Middle East. Oh my God! Who could have thought this would happen? Anyhow, thank you guys for supporting me in the show. I do appreciate it. 364 to 375 before Christ. The Count lived as a missionary under the rule of Valentinian I, and as a missionary during this time he traveled to Cornwall, England, 1307 to 1327. He had rooms at the Tower of London under King Edward II's rule. Also, he knew this guy, Raymond Lull. So Raymond Lull was a mathematician, a polymath, a philosopher, a logistician, and he was a writer and a mystic from the kingdom of Mallorca. He is credited with the writing of the first major works of the Catalan literature. Recently surfaced manuscripts show his work to have predated by several centuries the prominent work on election theory. He's also considered a pioneer of computational theory, especially given his influence on this guy Leibniz. I didn't chase him down. So this is interesting because you can already kind of see that he through this timeline, we're going to see that he meets these super interesting people all the way through. 1510 to 1540, the Count claims to have spent time studying speculative chemistry with Francis I of France at some point during these years. Francis was a king of France in 1515 until his death in 1547. He was the son of Charles, Count of Angoulême and Louise of Savoy. He succeeded his first cousin once removed, Louis the 12th, who died without a son. 1580, claimed to know M. Equiem de Montaigne, died 1592. He even produced a written dedication for Montaigne to himself as Count de Saint-Germain when Madame Pompadour asked. So we kind of talked about Madame Pompadour in the last two of these episodes. I think we're going to talk about her a little bit more here. But Michael Equiem de Montaigne, also known as the Lord of Montaigne, was one of the most significant philosophers of the French Renaissance, known for popularizing the essay as a literary genre. His work is noted for merging the casual anecdote and autobiography with his intellectual insight. 1695 to 1700, he was living in Venice. 1701, he was arrested, taken prisoner in Vienna. You don't want to be a prisoner in Vienna in the 1700s. That's all that I'm saying. 1710, Baron de Glicken wrote, "I've heard Rameau and his old relative of French ambassador at Venice testify to having knowing de Saint-Germain in 1710 when he had the appearance of a man of 50 years of age." 1712, demolished Ubergen Castle outside Nijmegen under the name Count Weldern Castle, previously owned by Jan van der Heyden. Van der Heyden died in 1712, and he was a very wealthy man with a large collection of both his own paintings and those of contemporaries, including Jacob van Roosendael, Jared T. Borsch, Gouvernart Flink, and Jan Levens. But his wealth derived not from painting or from glass-making business, but rather from his pursuits in the realm of technology and invention. When Van der Heyden's career as a painter is only sparsely documented, with the archive provides much more information about his inventions, since he has not only published multiple books explaining them, and also extremely successful at marketing and putting them to use on a large scale. Both of his major inventions, listen to this, how fucking cool is this guy? Both of his major inventions, street lamps and fire hoses, ingeniously combined not only a new variant of a particular technology, but perhaps more importantly, the new methods of managing this technology more efficiently and on a larger scale required by a city of Amsterdam's size and importance. I'm going to skip past the rest of this fire hose business. Very impressive, though. 1715 to 1723. Baron von Stouch knew the Count during the regency of Philippe de Orleans, where he was known as the Marquis de Montfort. 1723, the Count visited the 10-year-old Countess de Genil's family in Venice. 1723 to 1731, spent much time in Venice. In November 22nd, 1735, the Count sent letters to Sir Hans Salone when he was staying at the house of the widow Vincent on the Nieuwe Leon in the Twin Laan The Hague. 1735, Mr. Monin, a French embassy secretary, reported to Baron de Glicken that the Count had not aged a single day when he, Monin, saw him on a trip to Holland. 1737 to 1742, the Count Saint-Germain was at the court of the Shah of Persia, and this would place Saint-Germain in Persia at the end of the rule of Shah Abbas III and the beginning of the rule of Shah Sam. So I did a little bit of research into this, and it got really convoluted really quickly. It has to do with the passing of kind of the leadership in Iran. And this is something that comes up later. I don't know if we're going to get to touch on it later, but it seems like the Count had a special interest in Iran. I ran so far away, I gotta get away. 1743. Count Saint-Germain was reported to be in Versailles for a short while before continuing to England, appearing to be about 45 years old. 1743, in London, he lodged in a house on St. Martin Street. In 1745, he was arrested by Horace Walpole in England. Walpole relates the story in a letter to Sir Horace Mann on December 9th, 1745. Walpole, the 4th Earl of Orford, was also known as Horace Walpole. He was an English writer, an art historian, a man of letters, an antiquarian, and a Whig politician. He had a Strawberry Hill house built in Twickenham, the southwest of London, reviving the Gothic style from some decades before his Victorian successors. So this is interesting. 1745. The Count puts together some steam engine prototypes. So the first recorded rudimentary steam-powered engine was in Aeolipile, described by the hero of Alexandria, a mathematician and engineer in Roman Egypt in the 1st century. In the following centuries, the few steam-powered engines were known, like the Aeolipile, essentially experimental devices used by inventors to demonstrate the properties of steam. A rudimentary steam turbine device was described by Taghi al-Din in Ottoman Egypt in 1551 and by Giovanna Barranca in Italy in 1629. Geronimo di Inzy Beaumont received patents in 1606 for 50 steam-powered inventions, including a water pump for draining inundated mines. That is interesting. Dennis Papin, who was a Huguenot refugee, did some useful work on steam digesters in 1679. First used a piston to raise weights in 1690. So we'll just fit Count Saint-Germain in there somewhere. December 21st, 1745, the French charge d'Affaires in London reported an encounter with Saint-Germain, and they noted that he would not reveal anything about this person unless King Louis XV, unless to King Louis XV personally. Well, 1745, the Count composed music, which is currently at the British Museum. 1745 and 46, the Count spent time in Vienna after his arrest. He attends rehearsals for La Costanza de Luza at the theater on Haymaker Street. This is his music that he was working on. We listened to that, I think, in the first Count Saint-Germain episode. We played a little bit of it. Attends the first night of La Incostanza de Luza. He worked with Julia Frazee. The Count showed up with friend Prince Labowitz. And Saint-Germain showed up to all the rehearsals and all the shows. 1747, Walsh, a famous London music publisher, published favorite songs in the opera called L'Incostanza de Luza. 1747, Saint-Germain was staying at St. Mary's Axe in London with a Dr. Abraham Gomez Igres. This guy was otherwise known as Dr. Philippe de la Cour. He was a Jewish physician from Italy. So in 1749, this is when the Count starts his work as a diplomat for Louis XV. Louis was also known as Louis the Beloved, and he was the King of France from September 1715 until his death in 1774. He succeeded his great-grandfather at the age of 5 until he reached maturity on 15th February 1723. 1750, the Count visited Madame de Pompadour in France. So, everyone... Well, I can't say everybody. There's probably somebody that's going like, oh my God, the Count Saint-Germain is Doctor Who. Jean Antoinette Poisson, Marquis of Pompadour, commonly referred to as Madame de Pompadour, was a member of the French court. She was the official chief mistress of Louis XV from 1745 to 1751 and remained influential as a court favorite until her death. I believe the episode of Count Doctor Who that I'm talking about is called like The Girl in the Fireplace or something like that. It's a fun episode. 1755, the Count traveled to India with General Clive, who was under Vice Admiral Watson. He sent a letter to Count von Lamberg, December 6, 1755, to July 1756. The Count was at The Hague working with Minister. This word comes up a few more times, and I've got to apologize. Working with Minister Plenipotentiary. He was at The Hague working with Minister Plenipotentiary and D'Affry on a method to clean the port, and the Count brought in two men to help. Francois X de Aries de Lingerine and Veretti. He was an envoy extraordinary. This plenipotentiary, usually known as a minister, was a diplomatic head of a mission who was ranked below an ambassador. A diplomatic mission headed by an envoy was known as a legation rather than an embassy. So these missions have come up on our Crusades episodes before, specifically the Bernard of Clairvaux episodes, I believe. 1757, the Count arrives in Paris and was introduced at court by Belle Isle, 64 years old, who was a Count, Marechal, a minister of war since 1749. Count Saint-Germain declared that he had not visited France before. At least in this century, according to Preedy's book, the Count rented a handsome apartment with liveried lackeys and well-trained servants, living the life of a gentleman of considerable means. It was during this year that some ladies at court speculated that he may be the Wandering Jew. All right, the Wandering Jew. A mythical, immortal man whose legend began to spread in Europe in the 13th century. Original legend concerns a Jew who taunted Jesus on the way to the crucifixion, and he was then cursed to walk the earth until the second coming. The exact nature of this wanderer's indiscretion varies in different versions of the tale, as do aspects of this character. Sometimes he is said to be a shoemaker, or others a tradesman, while sometimes he is the doorman to the estate of Pontius Pilate. 1758, the Count has met Voltaire. By April 15th, 1758, Voltaire mentions him in a letter on that date sent to Frederick of Prussia. Francois Marie Arouet, known by his nom de plume Voltaire, was a French Enlightenment writer, historian, and philosopher, famous for his wit and criticism of Christianity, especially the Roman Catholic Church, as well as his advocacy of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and separation of the church and state. I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. 1760, the Mitchell Papers, a collection of letters about Count Saint-Germain and the relations with France, are written. George III requests that the letters do not be disclosed until after his death. George III was King of Great Britain and the King of Ireland from October 1760 until the union of the two countries in 1810, after which he was the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland until his death in 1820.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Advertise.com. Find more episodes on this topic. Sign up for the mailing list for bonus content. Get access to the show archive. And visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books. Learn more at Advertise.com.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit more. 1774, lodged in the house of Brigilo in Lucena, Switzerland, 1774 to 1776, a visit to Triesdorf. And here we go, 1775. A mysterious man was present at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So this is from Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Destiny of America. He obviously doesn't say that this is Count Saint-Germain, but I believe that this is probably how it fits. The unknown who swayed the signers of the Declaration of Independence, faced with the death penalty for high treason. Courageous men debated long before they picked up the quill pen to sign the parchment that declared their independence of the colonies from the mother country. For many hours they debated in the State House at Philadelphia. The lower chamber doors were locked and a guard posted, and suddenly a voice rang out from a balcony. A burst of eloquence to the keynote. God has given America to be free, and with the delegations rushing forward to sign, the American patriots then turned and expressed their gratitude to the unknown speaker. And the speaker was not in the balcony, and he was not found anywhere. And how he left the locked and guarded room is not known. No one knows to this day who he was. Some years ago, while visiting the Theosophical Colony at Ojai, California, A.P. Warrington, esoteric secretary of the society, discussed with me a number of historical curiosities, which led to the examination of this rare old volume of American political speeches of that date, earlier than those preserved in the first volume of the Congressional Record. He made particular mention of his speech by an unknown man at the time of the signing the Declaration of Independence. A particular book was not available at the moment, but Mr. Warrington offered to send me a copy of the speech, and he did, and unfortunately neglected to append the title or the date of the book, sent to India subsequently, and died at the Theosophical headquarters of Adar in Madras. Then in May 1938, the speech appeared in the Theosophist official organ of the society, published in Adar. In all probability, the original book is now in the library of the Theosophical Society. There is no reason to doubt the accuracy and authenticity of Mr. Warrington's copy. I am undertaking such investigations as is possible to discover the source of the speech. On July 4th, 1776, in the old State House in Philadelphia, a group of patriotic men were gathered for the solemn purpose of proclaiming the liberty of the American colonies. From the letters of Thomas Jefferson, which are preserved in the Library of Congress, I have been able to gather considerable data concerning this portentous session. In reconstructing the scene, it is well to remember that if the Revolutionary War failed, every man who signed the parchment then laying on the table would be subject to the penalty of death for high treason. It should also be remembered that the delegates representing the various colonies were not entirely of one mind as to the policies which should dominate the new nation. There were several speeches in the balcony. The balcony, patriotic citizens crowded all available space and listened attentively to the proceedings. Jefferson himself expressed with great vigor, and John Adams of Boston spoke with great strength. The Philadelphia printer, Dr. Benjamin Franklin, quiet and calm as usual, spoke his mind with well-chosen words. The delegates hovered between sympathy and uncertainty as the long hours of the summer day crept by, for life is sweet when there is danger of losing it. The lower doors were locked and a guard was posted to prevent interruptions. According to Jefferson, it was late in the afternoon before the delegates gathered their courage to the sticking point. The talk was about axes and scaffolds and the gibbet, when suddenly a strong, bold voice sounded, "Gibbet!" They may stretch our necks in all the gibbets of the land. They may turn every rock into a scaffold and every tree into a gallows and every home into a grave, and yet the words of this parchment can never die. They may pour blood on 1,000 scaffolds, and yet from every drop that dies the axe, a new champion of freedom will spring to birth. The British king may blot out the stars of God from the sky, but he cannot blot out his words written on that parchment there. The works of God may perish, his words never. The words of this declaration will live the world long after our bones are dust. To the mechanic in his workshop they will speak hope, and to the slave in the mines of freedom. But to the coward kings these words will speak in tones of warning they cannot choose to hear. Sign that parchment, sign if the next moment the gibbet's rope is about your neck. Sign if the next minute the hall rings with the clash of falling axes. Sign by all your hopes in life or death as men, husbands, and fathers, brothers. Sign your name to that parchment or be accursed forever. Sign, and not only for yourselves but for all ages. For that parchment will be the textbook of freedom, the Bible of the rights of man forever. Nay, do not start and whisper with surprise. It is the truth. Your own hearts witness it. God proclaims it. Look at this strange band of exiles and outcasts, suddenly transformed to a people, a handful of men, weak in arms, but mighty in God-like faith. Nay, look at your recent achievement, your Bunker Hill, your Lexington, and tell me, if you can, that God has not given America to the free. It is not given to our poor human intellect to climb to the skies and to pierce the counsel of the Almighty One. But methinks I stand among the awful clouds which veil the brightness of Jehovah's throne. Methinks I see the recording angel come trembling up to that throne and speak his dread message. Father, the old world is baptized in blood. Father, look with one glance of thine eternal eye, and behold evermore that tremble sight, man trodden beneath the oppressor's feet, nations lost in blood, murder, and superstition, walking hand in hand over the graves of victims, and not a single voice of hope to man. He stands there, the angel trembling, with the record of human guilt, but hark, the voice of God speaks out of the awful cloud, and let there be light again. Tell my people, the poor and the oppressed, to go out from the world, the old world, from oppression and blood, and build my altar in the new. As I live, my friends, I believe that to be his voice. Yes, were my soul trembling on the verge of eternity. Were this hand freezing in death, were his voice choking in the last struggle, I would still, with the last impulse of that soul, with the last wave of that hand, with the last gasp of that voice, implore you to remember this truth. God has given America to be free. Yes, as I sank into the gloomy shadows of the grave with my faint whisper, I would beg you to sign that parchment for the sake of those millions whose very breath is now hushed in intense expectation as they look up to you for these awful words. You are free. That unknown speaker fell exhausted to his seat. The delegates, carried away by his enthusiasm, rushed forward. John Hancock scarcely had time to pen his bold signature before the quill was grasped by another. It was done. The delegates turned to express their gratitude to the unknown speaker for his eloquent words. He was not there. Who was that strange man who seemed to speak with a divine authority, whose solemn words gave courage to the doubters and sealed the destiny of a new nation? Unfortunately, no one knows. All right, we'll do a few more here. Skipping ahead quite a bit, 1870, the Napoleon III was so interested in the undying count that he had a special commission put together to collect information on the count. The commission was stationed in the Hotel de Ville. We should remember the Hotel de Ville from the Paris Commune episode. 1781, a mysterious fire breaks out in the Hotel de Ville, consuming the files Napoleon's commission had collected. 1873, Madame Blavatsky meeting the Count. This in 85 years after meeting Baron Linden. Blavatsky is a controversial Russian occultist, philosopher, and author who co-founded the Theosophical Society in 1875. 1896, he met Annie Besant, who was also another socialist, theosophist, women's rights activist, writer, orator, educationist, and philanthropist. 1897, he met singer Emma Calve. Count Saint-Germain publishes Practical Palmistry with a Chicago publisher in 1897. 1901, he publishes two more books, Practical Astrology, a simple method of casting horoscopes, The Language of the Stars, and the Practical Hypnotism Theories and Other Experiments, with the same Chicago publisher. There's this weird story about him in World War I getting captured, and they claim that he was a Jewish-looking man, and he kind of had a mental breakdown. In 1921, he met, in New York, he met Paul Foster Case, the founder of the Builders of Aditum, claimed to have met the Count in this incarnation. The Builders of Aditum is a school of Western mystery traditions based in L.A., which is registered as a non-profit, tax-exempt religious organization. It was founded by Paul Foster Case, and it had its roots in both the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Masonic Blue Lodge system. 1930, Guy Ballard met Saint-Germain on Mount Shasta in California. Started the I.M. activity. The I.M. movement, by the original Ascended Master Teachings religious movement found in the early 1930s by Guy Ballard and his wife Edna Wheeler Ballard in Chicago, Illinois, is an offshoot of the Theosophy and a major precursor of several New Age religions, including the Church Universal and Triumphant. The movement had up to 1 million followers in 1938 and is still active today on a smaller scale. And then in 1933, there was this mess where this guy showed up in New Orleans named Jacques Saint-Germain, and he wound up being like a vampire. He got in trouble because he bit a girl and fucking threw her off a balcony. And there's a lot of speculation that this vampire was like our Count Saint-Germain. But I don't really have time to get to it. I'm going to just skip to the last thing. In the 60s, Thomas Selman claimed to have heard of a sighting of the Count at a political conference in Berlin. I'm guessing he could have been attending the March 25th through 27th, 1966 Bilderberg Conference in Hesse, who was being held at the Nassauer Hof Hotel Wiesbaden in West Germany. This guy, Tom Selman, is a writer. And then in January 28th, 1972, Richard Chamfrey went on a French television claiming to be the Count. This claim the proprietors of findingcountsaintgermain.com says that this claim from Richard Chaffney was false. All right, I'm John. This is the Advertise. Thank you guys. Be good, be safe, and thank you guys for the support. I really do appreciate it. I hope you like this episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please send an email or find us on social media and let us know what you think about the show. We would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rate and review wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can find Stigmata Studios, graphic, novels, and comic books at apricast.com.